So what are the limits of backward induction? Well, there's many different challenges in the mother and brother example. You saw some of them. But I think we can do another example that will make it even more clear. And it would also give us a chance to practice a little bit more the techniques of developing trees and using them for backward induction. So let's do the game that you had to answer as part of your lecture quiz, the previous lecture quiz. And this is this one, the one in which Dad is making the final decision as to where to go on a day that Mom has a day off. So let's solve the game using a decision tree. The first thing to do is to organize the information. And there's a lot of information here. So there's many different ways you can organize the information. I'm going to tell you how I organize the information, but this might not be the same way you did it. There's no perfect way of doing it. But I do think that a good idea is to at least begin by considering the 4 questions I've been mentioning to use at this stage of the course into how to organize the information of a particular game. The first one is who's playing, and here we have 3 players, Bart, Cassie, and Dad. How do they move? Well, Bart moves first, then Cassie, and then Dad. And when Cassie moves, she knows how Bart moves, and when Dad moves, he knows how Bart and Cassie moved. Then what are the decisions? Well, Bart and Cassie are going to decide to either go to the amusement park or the science museum. And Dad is going to decide whether to go to the amusement park, the science museum, or the mountain hike, only if Bart and Cassie don't agree with each other. If Bart and Cassie agree with each other, then Dad has no decision to make. And then the outcome. So there's a lot of information in terms of the outcome. The first thing is that if Bart gets an amusement park and Cassie gets a science museum, then they get 3 because those are the favorites for each of them. But if Bart gets the science museum and Cassie gets the amusement park, then each of them get 2 because those are the least preferred of those for them. Then Dad gets 2 from either A or S. And if Bart and Cassie choose the same, then Dad is pretty happy and he doesn't have to make a decision and he gets 4. But if Bart and Cassie choose differently, then Dad will have to can choose between any of them. But if he chooses the mountain bike, which is an option for him, he will get 3. But Cassie and Bart will only get 1 from that. They actually don't like the mountain bike at all. So knowing that, we can now construct our decision tree. So Bart is the first mover and he has 1 decision to either go to the amusement park or the science museum. After he chooses, Cassie's going to choose. And he's going to choose either to go to the amusement park or to the science museum. So we got same coming out of each of those 2 notes. Now, if she chooses the amusement park and they choose the same, then the game ends there. But if she chooses the science museum, then that actually chooses, and he will choose between the amusement park, science museum, or the mountain bike. If Cassie doesn't agree with Bart, which is when Cassie chooses the science museum and Bart chooses the amusement park, and when Bart chooses the science museum and Cassie chooses the amusement park. So those are we have 8 terminal nodes, and now we need payoff for them. So let's start with the extreme. That's when Bart and Cassie choose the same thing. If Bart chooses the amusement park and Cassie chooses the amusement park, then Bart gets away with the best one, that's 3. Cassie gets 2, and Dad gets 4 because they chose the same thing. And Dad also gets 4 if Bart chooses the science museum and Cassie chooses the science museum. But in this case, it's Cassie the one that chooses the best. Her best, so that would be 3 and 2 for Bart. Now, if they choose differently, then Dad has to decide. And that is, if Bart chooses the amusement park and Cassie chooses the science museum, then Dad can choose the amusement park, and that will give him 3 to Bart because that's his best. 2 to Cassie and 2 to Dad. If Dad chooses the science museum, then Bart only gets 2, Cassie gets 3, and Dad gets 2. And if Dad chooses a mountain bike, then both Cassie and Bart gets 1, and Dad gets 3. So these are all the payoff. So it's always a good idea to check your work to make sure that you have all the payoff correctly before you start using backward induction to solve it.